My family thought I was a fool to inherit the company over my CEO's sister, so I pretended to be incompetent for 10 months to expose her secret plan. It was a week before the Super Bowl. Grandpa never missed a game. Never. The man watched football like some people go to church, religiously, passionately, and with enough beer to baptize a small congregation. Now I understand he was waiting for us all to be together. One last family huddle before the final play. When the lawyer finished reading the will, my sister Sarah gripped her pen so hard it cracked. Black ink spread across the $2 million inheritance papers like blood on Italian marble. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be your typical family grieving process. No, sir. This was going to be war. Let me back up a bit. You need to understand something about the Miller family. We built things. Not metaphorically, literally. Miller and Sons Construction have been pouring concrete and raising beams since 1943. 3 generations of calloused hands and bent backs. The kind of business where your last name is your credit score and a handshake still means something. I remember our last Christmas dinner. Sarah, our brilliant CFO, raised her glass like she was accepting an Oscar. The chandelier light caught her Harvard MBA ring just right, making it sparkle like a tiny middle finger to the rest of us mere mortals. She cleared her throat with that theatrical precision she perfected in boardrooms across the state. The toast went something like this. Sarah announced that Miller & Sons had just completed its best quarter in company history. Profits up 47%. The room filled with polite golf claps. Grandpa nodded, his face unreadable as always. Stone face, we called him. The man could watch his house burn down, and you'd think he was contemplating wallpaper patterns. Then it was my turn. I stood up, raised my beer, Coors Light, because I'm classy like that, and announced that my student Timmy had drawn a horse with 5 legs that day. The 5th one, I explained with mock seriousness, was for stability. You could hear crickets. Sarah rolled her eyes, so hard I thought they might fall out and land in the mashed potatoes. Then Grandpa laughed. Not a chuckle, not a polite courtesy laugh. A real, genuine, from-the-belly laugh that shook the table. First time I'd heard him laugh like that in years. Sarah's face went through more colors than a Home Depot paint sample wall. That was 3 months ago. Now here we were in Attorney Davis's office, a place that smelled like old leather and broken dreams. The kind of office where fortunes change hands and families fall apart, all before lunch. Davis had been Grandpa's lawyer for 40 years. The man had seen enough family drama to write a soap opera. Today, he looked like he'd rather be getting a root canal. Davis cleared his throat. The sound echoed in the silence like a gunshot at a funeral. He adjusted his glasses twice, then started reading in that monotone voice lawyers must learn in law school right after How to Bill for Breathing 101. The small stuff came first. Grandpa's truck to Cousin Jake, his tools to Uncle Pete, the cabin to Aunt Margaret. Everyone nodded, satisfied with their little pieces of the empire. Then came the main event, the heavyweight championship, the whole enchilada. Regarding the primary assets of the estate, Davis paused, looking at Sarah and me like we were 2 prize fighters about to enter the ring. The $2 million in liquid assets would be placed in a testamentary trust. Sarah leaned forward. I could practically see the dollar signs in her eyes doing a little victory dance. Sarah Miller will gain access to these funds after completing 1 year of service under the direct supervision of her brother, Alex Miller. Starting position, personal assistant. The room went so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Hell, you could hear a feather drop. You could hear an ant sneeze. Sarah's jaw dropped like someone had cut the strings holding it up. Personal assistant? She'd been running $1 million deals while I was teaching 3rd graders how to spell responsibility. Ironically, a word I'd never been good at myself. Davis continued, each word landing like a hammer blow. However, Alex, as the sole managing member of the LLC with 100% ownership transferred to him by Henry Miller, maintains the right to rotate Sarah through any division of the business as he sees fit. I felt my stomach drop through the floor, through the building's foundation, possibly all the way to China. Sole owner? Me? The guy who once tried to expense a PlayStation as team-building equipment. Furthermore, Davis seemed to age 10 years with each paragraph. The primary inheritance, Miller and Son Construction Company, is bequeathed entirely to Alex Miller. Sarah's face had gone from red to white to a shade of purple. I didn't know humans could achieve without medical intervention. She was gripping the conference table like she was trying to leave fingerprints in the mahogany. "Wait!" Sarah's voice came out as a whisper, then stronger. "There must be conditions." Davis nodded slowly. "Indeed. Termination of Sarah's employment without cause verified by a JAMS arbitration panel will result in immediate payout to the trust plus a penalty of $500,000 to be paid by Alex personally." The old man had built a trap, a beautiful, elaborate trap. Sarah needed to work for me to get her money, but I couldn't fire her without destroying myself. We were locked together like two scorpions in a bottle. Classic Grandpa. Even dead, he was still 3 moves ahead of everyone else. Sarah stood up so fast her chair fell backward. It hit the floor with a crack that made everyone jump. She looked at me with eyes that could melt steel beams. "1 year," she said. Just 2 words, but they carried the weight of a declaration of war. That evening, I needed a drink. Or 12. I found myself at Murphy's, the kind of dive bar where the bartender knows your name, and your credit score is irrelevant as long as you got cash. Through the grimy window, I spotted her, Sarah, alone at a corner table, not drinking, not crying, just planning. She had a napkin spread out in front of her, covered in diagrams and numbers. Her hand moved across it with surgical precision, like she was dissecting a company rather than doodling on bar supplies. The overhead light cast shadows that made her look like some sort of corporate villain plotting world domination. Or at least, company domination. This wasn't a revenge plan. I'd seen Sarah angry before. This was different. This was cold, calculated. This was a takeover plan. She looked up suddenly. Our eyes met through the dirty glass. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she smiled. Not a warm smile. Not even an evil smile. It was the smile of a chess player who just realized their opponent's king was already in check. They just didn't know it yet. I walked home in the Seattle drizzle. Because of course it was drizzling. This is Seattle. It drizzles when you're happy, sad, or trying to have an existential crisis. The rain felt appropriate, though, like the universe was setting the mood for what was coming. The company Grandpa built with his bare hands was now mine. The company I knew nothing about running. The company my sister had been effectively managing for the last 5 years while I was teaching kids about the water cycle and getting glitter permanently embedded in my clothing. As I reached my apartment, thunder rolled across the sky. The air smelled like ozone and impending doom, or maybe that was just my imagination. But I knew one thing for certain. Grandpa hadn't given me a gift. He'd given me a test. Sarah wasn't going to be my assistant. She was going to be my trial by fire. The smart play would be to give her the company, take my teacher salary, and live a quiet life. But here's the thing about the Millers. We're builders, not quitters. Even when the foundation is cracked, the plans are missing, and your business partner wants to bury you in the concrete. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photo from last Christmas. Grandpa in the center, stone face as always, but now I noticed something I had missed before. His hand was on my shoulder, not Sarah's. And if you looked close enough, really close, you could see the hint of a plan in those gray eyes. The old bastard knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't about money or companies or who was the better grandchild. This was about something else entirely. Something I was only beginning to understand. I stood there in the rain, looking up at the Seattle sky, and laughed. Because only now, standing on the edge of corporate warfare with my sister, did I realize the truth. The construction business wasn't about building structures. It was about building people. And Grandpa's final project? That was us. The storm was coming. I could feel it in my bones, smell it in the air, taste in the rain. Sarah had her plans, her diagrams, her cold calculated strategies. But I had something she didn't expect. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And sometimes in war, that's the most dangerous weapon of all. Tomorrow, Sarah would walk into Miller & Sons as my assistant. The woman who'd increased profits by 47% would be fetching my coffee. The Harvard MBA would be taking my calls. The corporate shark would be swimming in my kiddie pool. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Absolutely everything. And somewhere in whatever afterlife he constructed for himself, Grandpa was probably laughing his ass off. Monday morning came like a hangover after a wedding. Inevitable, painful, and full of regret. 7 a.m. sharp. Sarah walked into my office. My office. Still felt weird saying that. She carried a Starbucks cup that probably cost more than my entire teaching supplies budget for a month. The coffee smelled like disappointment and overpriced cardamom. She set it down on my desk with the precision of a bomb technician. Steam rose between us like a peace offering from hell. I took a sip, burnt my tongue. Perfect. Nothing says welcome to corporate America like third-degree burns before 8 a.m. I nodded my appreciation, told her it was delicious. The subtext hung in the air thicker than Seattle fog. I know what you're doing. She smiled a Harvard smile of hers and mentioned something about the secret being in the grind. Right, the grind. We both knew what she really meant. She was going to grind me into powder, sweep me up, and dump me into construction site concrete. But hey, at least the coffee was organic. That first week was like watching a nature documentary where you know the gazelle is about to get eaten. Except I was a gazelle, and I was somehow also watching myself. Sarah brought me reports I couldn't understand, contract that might as well have been written in ancient Sumerian, and spreadsheets that made my eyes cross. She was patient, terrifyingly patient, like a spider teaching a fly about web design. By Thursday, I was drowning. Not metaphorically drowning, actually drowning in paper. My desk looked like Office Depot had exploded. I had sticky notes on my sticky notes. I had color-coded folders that I'd forgotten the color-coding system for. I had 3 calculators because I kept losing them under the paperwork avalanche. Sarah would stand in my doorway, watching, always watching. She'd offer to help, voice sweet as antifreeze. Each time she explained something, she'd use smaller words, like she was talking to one of my third graders. Except my third graders actually understood their assignments. The construction crews started noticing. These were guys who'd worked with Grandpa for decades. Men who could read blueprints like newspapers and spot a structural weakness from across a job site. They saw me fumbling with purchase orders and shook their heads. I caught them taking bets on how long I'd last. The over-under was 3 weeks. Friday afternoon, second week, I hit rock bottom. Or what I thought was rock bottom. Turns out, rock bottom has a basement. I'd approved an order for 10,000 pounds of concrete. Sounds reasonable, right? Except I'd missed a decimal point. We actually needed 100,000 pounds. The Klein Tower project, our biggest contract, was going to be delayed. Sarah found a mistake. Of course. She always found the mistakes. She stood in my office, holding the purchase order like evidence at a murder trial. Her face was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm you see on weather forecasters right before they tell you about the Category 5 hurricane. She explained the situation slowly, carefully, like she was defusing a bomb made of stupidity and incompetence. The delay would cost us $50,000 per day. The client would probably sue. Our reputation, built over 3 generations, would be toast. Burnt toast. The kind you can't even scrape clean. I sat there, feeling about 3 inches tall. This was it. This was how Miller and Sons died. Not with a bang, but with a misplaced decimal point. But then Sarah did something unexpected. She pulled out her phone, made 3 calls, and fixed it. Just like that. Found extra concrete from a canceled project in Tacoma, arranged emergency transport. Even got a discount. The Klein Tower would get its concrete on time. Crisis averted. She could have let me fail. Should have, from her perspective. Instead, she saved the company. Why? That question kept me up all night. Monday morning, week 3, I made a decision. If you can't beat them and you can't join them, sometimes you have to become something else entirely. I called Sarah into my office. She came in with that same control walk, like a panther in Prada. I leaned back in Grandpa's chair. Still smelled like his cologne, Old Spice and decisions. Told her straight up, Grandpa left me 100% of the LLC, but I wasn't an idiot. Well, not a complete idiot. I knew she understood this business better than I ever would. I slid a paper across the desk. Official letterhead and everything. Sarah Miller, Interim Chief Operating Officer. Full operational control. She could make any changes she wanted, implement any systems, restructure anything. The only catch? I retained veto power on personnel decisions. Hiring and firing still went through me. She picked up the paper like it might explode. Read it twice, 3 times. Her poker face cracked for just a second. I saw surprise, maybe even respect. Then the mask slammed back down. She smiled. It was like watching a shark discover a swimming pool full of seals. That smile could have frozen lava. She thanked me, voice professional controlled. But her eyes? Her eyes were already redesigning the company from the ground up. Within a week, she transformed everything. New accounting systems, digital inventory tracking, automated purchasing protocols. She moved through the company like a tornado with an MBA, leaving efficiency and terror in her wake. The old-timers hated it. John, our senior foreman who'd been with the company since the Nixon era, came to my office almost daily. He'd stand there, hard hat in hand, complaining about the new tablet system, the productivity metrics, the safety protocols that went beyond OSHA requirements. But the younger guys, they loved it. Suddenly we were competitive with the tech-savvy firms. We were winning bids we'd never even qualified for before. Profits jumped 18% in the first month. Then came the cuts. Sarah started with the obvious stuff: redundant positions, outdated equipment leases, overpriced suppliers. But then she went deeper. She wanted to restructure the employee retirement fund, cut the 401k matching from 6% to 3%, eliminate the Christmas bonuses that Grandpa had given out for 40 years. She presented it all in a boardroom that suddenly felt like a courtroom. Charts and graphs covered the walls, each cut justified with cold, hard data. She talked about market rates, industry standards, competitive positioning. Every word precise, every number accurate. I asked her about the workers, the guys who built their retirement plans around that 6% match, the families who counted on those Christmas bonuses for their kids' presents. She shrugged, said they were just numbers on a spreadsheet, said emotion had no place in business. That's when I started watching her more carefully, started noticing things, like how she always ate lunch alone, even though she could have joined any table in the cafeteria, how she stayed until midnight every night, long after even the workaholics went home, how she kept a photo on her desk, not of family or friends, but the company's first building site from 1943. Then something strange happened. Tom, one of our masons, mentioned his wife needed surgery. Cancer. The insurance would cover most of it, but the deductibles and travel to Seattle Cancer Care Alliance would wipe them out. Tom had been with us 15 years, never missed a day until now. 2 days later, Tom found an envelope in his locker. $20,000 in cash. No note, no explanation. He asked everyone, even me. I had no idea where it came from. But that afternoon, I saw Sarah's car at the ATM. She was wearing sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. Seattle cloudy, which is like saying water is wet. This pattern repeated. Sarah would cut budgets ruthlessly during the day. Then mysteriously, workers in crisis would find anonymous help. Jake's kid needed special education therapy. Suddenly the school received a large donation earmarked for his son. Maria's truck broke down. A mechanic friend of a friend fixed it for free, parts included. Sarah was playing both sides. Corporate villain by day, guardian angel by night. It was like watching Batman if Batman also happened to be the Joker. Week 6. The battle lines were drawn. I'm suffocating under the weight of decisions I don't understand, contracts I can barely read, and responsibilities I never wanted. Sarah's basically running everything, but she still needs my signature on major decisions. She brings me stacks of papers, explains them in that patronizing tone, watches me sign my name like I'm signing my own death warrant. One night, exhausted and defeated, I stayed late, wandered the empty office like a ghost haunting his own failure. That's when I really understood what Grandpa had done. He hadn't given me a company. He'd given me a prison. and he'd made my sister the warden. But here's what the old man didn't count on. I'd spent 7 years teaching third graders. You know what third graders are? They're tiny chaos agents. They're unpredictable, irrational, and absolutely brilliant at finding loopholes adults never considered. If Sarah wanted to play chess, fine. But I wasn't going to play by chess rules. I was going to play Calvin ball, the game where the rules are made up and the points don't matter. She expected resistance or incompetence. What she didn't expect was strategic stupidity. So, week 7, I started my new curriculum, Advanced Corporate Sabotage for Dummies, where I was both the teacher and the student. I started making mistakes. Not real mistakes, calculated ones. I'd approve obviously bad deals, then let Sarah fix them, making sure clients saw her save the day. I'd bumble through meetings, letting her step into close deals. I became the corporate equivalent of a pratfall comedian, and Sarah was always there to catch the company before it hit the ground. But here's the secret. Every time she saved us, she revealed her plans. Every correction showed me her strategy. Every rescue taught me how she thought. I was learning the business not by studying it, but by almost destroying it and watching her rebuild it. Some people learn to swim by taking lessons. Others learn by being thrown in the deep end. I was learning by drowning repeatedly while taking notes on water viscosity. Week 10, Sarah was getting suspicious. She'd narrow her eyes when I made particularly obvious errors. Test me with smaller decisions to see if I'd screw those up too. I would, but inconsistently. Keep them guessing. First rule of being unpredictable. The workers started calling me things. Not to my face, but I heard them. The fool, the jester, Grandpa's mistake. It stung, but it also meant the plan was working. Even Sarah started to relax, believing she'd figure me out. That night, I decided to stop being a ghost in my own office. I started searching for answers, any clue Grandpa might have left behind. In the bottom drawer of his ancient filing cabinet, my fingers found a loose panel. This wasn't an accident. This was a discovery born of desperation. Behind the false back were his real files. Not the official ones, the ones that mattered. Notes on every employee, every client, every competitor. And at the very back, a folder labeled simply S&A. Sarah and Alex. Our folder. 40 years of observations, starting from when we were kids. Every report card, every achievement, every failure, documented in Grandpa's cramped handwriting. And at the end, dated just a month before he died, a single page, his final assessment of us. Sarah, brilliant, ruthless, alone, needs to remember why we build, not just what we build. Me, heart in the right place, head in the clouds, needs pressure to become diamond. At the bottom, one last line. The company survives only if they both do. I sat there in the dark office, holding that paper, smelling the lingering scent of old spice and leather, feeling the weight of 3 generations of builders pressing down on me. This wasn't about choosing an heir. It was about forging one. Or 2. The old man had set us up, made us opponents when we needed to be partners. But maybe that was the point. Maybe you can't build something together until you've tried to tear it apart. Maybe you can't trust someone until you've seen them at their worst. Tomorrow would be week 11. Sarah was planning something big. I could see in the way she organized her files, the meetings she scheduled, the calls she made after hours. She was going for the kill shot. But I had a plan too. A stupid plan. A ridiculous plan. A plan so dumb it might actually be brilliant. Or it might destroy everything. Honestly, at this point, I couldn't tell the difference anymore. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the Seattle skyline. Somewhere out there, Grandpa was either laughing or rolling in his grave. Possibly both. The fool's gambit was about to begin. Grandpa wanted builders. Fine, but before you build, you need to clear the lot and lay new foundation. My job was to play the fool, create chaos, and see what we were really made of when the dust settled. Month 10. I wasn't pretending to be the fool anymore. I had become one. The company was breathing through a ventilator, and Sarah walked into my office with a manila folder thick enough to use as a murder weapon. The Seattle Public Library renovation tender. $32 million. Our last shot at staying relevant, or our spectacular final failure. She placed it on my desk with the care of a bomb disposal expert. Her eyes had that glint, the same one she had when she beat me at Monopoly 20 years ago by mortgaging everything and betting all on Park Place. This was her checkmate, her magnum opus, the move that would prove, once and for all, who should really be running Miller & Sons. The numbers were perfect. Too perfect. She'd undercut our closest competitor by exactly 3%. Enough to win, not enough to raise suspicions. She'd factored in material costs down to the last nail, labor hours down to the last coffee break. It was the kind of bid that would make Warren Buffett weep with joy. But something fell off, like finding a Picasso at a garage sale. When things look too good to be true in construction, someone's usually about to get buried in concrete. I spent that night in Grandpa's office, staring at his portrait. The old bastard stared back. Those gray eyes followed me like some construction-themed Mona Lisa in the painting. His hand rested on a hard hat, the same hard hat sitting on my desk, collecting dust like my teaching degree. I picked it up, felt its weight. Inside, Grandpa had written his motto, "Build straight, even on crooked ground." Classic Grandpa, making everything sound like a fortune cookie written by a foreman. My fingers traced the frame of his portrait, looking for, I don't know what. A sign? Divine intervention? A note saying, "Just kidding, here's the real will." Instead, I found a small indentation, a hidden latch. The frame swung open like a door. Behind it, a wall safe that looked older than democracy. The combination lock had 6 digits. I tried everything. Birthdays, anniversaries, the day the company was founded. Nothing. Then I remembered. I was 8, helping Grandpa with the backyard deck. Drove a nail straight through my thumb like an idiot. He pulled it out, bandaged me up, told me pain was just weakness leaving the body. That was March 15th, 2003. The Ides of March. Even my accidents had classical references. March 15th, 03. The safe opened with a groan that sounded like it hadn't been touched since the Seahawks last won the Super Bowl. Inside, 3 things: a letter, a folder, and a flask of whiskey that probably cost more than my teaching salary. The letter was short. Grandpa never was one for speeches. "Alex, business in the toilet? Good. Pressure makes diamonds. You see people. She sees numbers. Neither is wrong. Both are incomplete. The folder has her greatest hits. Not for blackmail. For teaching. She needs to remember why we build, not just what we build. Don't screw this up. Build. Don't talk. HM." I opened the folder. It wasn't criminal. Grandpa hadn't been collecting dirt. He'd been collecting lessons. 3 years of Sarah's deals, annotated in his cramped handwriting. Every aggressive negotiation, every corner cut, every partner pressured. All legal, all effective, all soulless. But he'd also noted the aftermath. The Martinez family company that went under after Sarah's negotiation. The Peterson crew that had to lay off half their workers after she'd squeezed their margins. The Cho suppliers who'd been with us 30 years, until Sarah found someone 5% cheaper. Each page had a photo attached. Martinez at his son's graduation. The kid became a doctor because the family business was gone. Peterson's crew at a barbecue, half the faces crossed out, labeled "laid off." The Cho family closing their warehouse. 3 generations of suppliers ended by a spreadsheet. Grandpa had documented the human cost of efficiency, the price of profit, the soul for percentage points. At the bottom of the folder, another note. "She's not evil. She's blind. You're not stupid. You're unfocused. Together, you're one complete builder. Apart, you're 2 incomplete disasters. The library tender is her Titanic. Your job, be her lifeboat, not her iceberg." I laughed, then cried, then laughed while crying, which probably looked psychotic. The security camera footage would be interesting. I grabbed the expensive whiskey, took a shot that burned like liquid wisdom, and got to work. The library tender wasn't just aggressive. It was a trap. Sarah had cut too deep. She'd assumed union labor, but hadn't accounted for the new collective bargaining agreement. She'd quoted winter prices for summer concrete. She'd forgotten that the library was a historical building. The permits alone would eat our profit margin. But here's the thing. All these mistakes were fixable, if caught in time, if someone was looking for them, if someone cared more about building something lasting than winning something temporary. 48 hours. No sleep, just coffee, determination, and that voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like Grandpa calling me an idiot in the most loving way possible. I rebuilt the entire bid from scratch, using Grandpa's old notebooks as my guide. He'd bid on this same library renovation 20 years ago, lost to a lowballer who went bankrupt halfway through. The city had to eat the cost, restart the project. They'd remember that. They'd value stability over savings. I found the clause Sarah missed, a provision for challenging submitted bids within 30 days if gross miscalculations could be demonstrated. Not fraud, just honest mistakes that would hurt both the contractor and the city. It was meant to protect everyone from disasters. I submitted the challenge with our corrected numbers, higher than Sarah's bid by 8%, but realistic, honest, buildable. The meeting was scheduled for Friday, 3 p.m., the 47th floor of the Columbia Center, Seattle's tallest building, because of course it was. Sarah arrived like a corporate Valkyrie, Armani suit sharp enough to cut glass, Louboutin heels clicking against marble like a countdown to execution. She saw me at the conference table and stopped. I'd placed Grandpa's portrait between us, facing her. The old man's eyes seemed to track her movement. I swear I saw him wink, but that might have been the sleep deprivation. Our parents were there too, Mom clutching Dad's hand like they were watching their kids perform open-heart surgery on each other. The city representatives sat at the far end, looking uncomfortable. They'd probably seen family businesses implode before, but not usually this theatrically. Sarah sat down with the grace of a samurai, preparing for seppuku. She knew something was wrong. The MIT graduate in her was calculating variables, running scenarios, trying to figure out what I'd done. I slid the first folder across the table. Her greatest hits, as Grandpa had called them. She opened it, and I watched her face change. Not dramatically. Sarah didn't do dramatic. Just a slight widening of the eyes, a microscopic tremble in her hand. She saw the photos, the families, the consequences. 3 years of victories that looked different when you saw the casualties. Mom gasped. Dad removed his glasses, cleaned them, put them back on, then removed them again, his nervous tics since forever. The city reps leaned in, confused but intrigued. Sarah looked up at me. For the first time in months, maybe years, I saw my sister. Not the CFO, not the Harvard MBA. Just Sarah, who used to make me peanut butter sandwiches when Mom worked late, who taught me long division, who cried when I broke my arm falling off my bike. I pulled up the presentation on the screen. 2 slides. First, original bid Miller & Sons. The numbers she'd submitted. Clean, aggressive, profitable. Second, corrected bid Miller & Sons. My numbers. Higher, realistic, sustainable. Then the documentation. Every miscalculation highlighted. Every overlooked cost itemized. The union agreement she'd missed. The permit requirements she'd underestimated. The seasonal price variations she'd ignored. Sarah's fingers drummed on the table. Her tell when she was calculating odds. She was good at math. She knew what this meant. The city would reject her bid as unsustainable. They'd either accept my correction or restart the entire process. Either way, her masterpiece was dead. I could have stopped there, could have let her fail, taken the victory, proved I wasn't the fool everyone thought I was. That would have been the smart play, the corporate play, the Sarah play. Instead, I stood up, walked around the table, and sat next to her. Our reflections in the polished table showed 2 exhausted people pretending to be executives. I looked at the city representatives and told them the truth. The miscalculations were mine. I'd rushed the original submission. Sarah had caught them, spent 48 hours correcting them, but let me present the fixes to save my pride. We were submitting the corrected bid as a team. Co-project managers. Equal partners. Sarah's head snapped toward me, so fast I thought she might need a chiropractor. The city reps exchanged glances. Mom started crying. Happy tears, I think. Dad put his glasses back on, finally. One of the city representatives, an older woman who looked like she'd seen every construction drama since the Space Needle was built, smiled. She said they appreciated our honesty, our transparency, and our commitment to getting things right rather than just getting them cheap. They'd review both bids and let us know. We got the contract, not because we were the lowest bidder, but because we were the most honest one. Turns out the city had learned from past mistakes too. They wanted builders, not bargain hunters. But that's not the important part. The important part happened in the elevator afterward. Sarah hadn't said a word since the meeting. As we descended from the 47th floor, she finally spoke. She told me she wasn't staying for the money anymore. She needed to prove something, to Grandpa, to me, but mostly to herself, that she could build, not just calculate, that she could create, not just optimize. I told her she had 2 months left on her year of service. Tomorrow, she'd start her first rotation. On-site construction management. Hard hat instead of Harvard. Concrete instead of spreadsheets. She laughed. Actually laughed. First time I'd heard that sound in years. It sounded like hope mixed with exhaustion, mixed with something that might have been respect. The next morning, she showed up to the Klein Tower site at 6 a.m. Steel-toed boots, worn jeans, and a hard hat with her name on it. John, our senior foreman who complained about her changes, handed her a cup of coffee, black, strong enough to wake the dead, the kind we've been drinking on job sites since the pyramids. She spent that day learning to read blueprints from the ground up, not the spreadsheet down. She learned that concrete has a personality, that weather matters more than quarterly projections, that workers have names and families and mortgages that depend on more than efficiency metrics. Week by week, I watch her transform, not into someone different, but into someone complete. She was still brilliant with numbers, but now she knew what those numbers meant in terms of sweat and hope and generations of craftsmanship. Month 11 ended. Month 12 began. The year of service was almost over. The $2 million was within reach. But something had changed. Sarah wasn't counting days anymore. She was counting lessons. Learning from John how to spot good rebar from bad. From Martinez, yes, we hired him back, how to estimate weather delays. From the young guys, how to use the new digital tools she'd once forced on them. Yesterday, cleaning out Grandpa's desk for the 3rd time, because apparently the man had more hidden compartments than a magician's trunk. I found another envelope, dated the day he died. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper and a smaller envelope marked "Open Together." The paper was classic Grandpa. Direct, devastating. Alex, if you're reading this, you figured it out. The will was a test. The company was bait. Sarah's service was education. Your incompetence was camouflage. The real inheritance isn't Miller and Sons. It's each other. The small envelope has the actual inheritance. You'll need Sarah to access it. You always did need each other more than either of you needed me. Don't mess this up. Build together. HM. I called Sarah. She was still at the job site, covered in concrete dust, arguing with a supplier about sustainable materials. She'd become one of those people who could make you feel guilty about your carbon footprint, while simultaneously respecting her expertise. Character development. They call it in stories. In real life, it's just growth. She came to the office. I showed her the letter. We opened the smaller envelope together. Swiss bank account. $50 million. The account required 2 signatures. The passcode was the date Sarah first visited a construction site. When she was 7, when Grandpa let her pour her first concrete, when she declared she'd run this company someday. But there was a condition. The money could only be used for one purpose: expanding Miller and Sons into sustainable construction, green building, solar installations, the kind of construction that builds tomorrow, not just today. Sarah and I looked at each other across Grandpa's desk. 2 kids who'd inherited more than money or companies. We'd inherited a lesson in what family businesses are really about. Not the business part, the family part. On the envelope from Switzerland, in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. For those who learn to pull nails out, not drive them deeper. I look out the window now. Sarah's down there with the crew, hard hat on, blueprints in hand, laughing at something John said. She's different. We both are. Grandpa always said pressure makes diamonds. Turns out he was right. But he forgot to mention that diamonds start as carbon, the same stuff in pencils and coal, and everything that builds. You just need the right pressure, the right time, and the right family to help you transform. Tomorrow we break ground on the library. Sarah and I, co-project managers. She handles the numbers. I handle the people. She pushes for efficiency. I push for humanity. We fight every day and build something better because of it. The company survived. The family survived. Hell, we might even thrive. Because the hardest construction project isn't raising buildings. It's raising each other. And that's a job that never really ends. You just keep building one day at a time, one decision at a time, one forgiveness at a time, brick by brick, nail by nail, until you've built something that even death can't tear down, a family that actually works together. Imagine that.